Firstly, let's start with the psychoacademic war against black boys. I have discovered in my 12 years as a school psychologist and as a therapist and a clinician that the American social order has a rites of passage for black males. It's a 5-stage passage, and it encompasses the entire life of every black male born in this country. The 5 stages goes like this. The first stage is miseducation. The 3 objectives of miseducation include A, to teach the black boy to hate himself.
That's right.
B, to teach the black boy to love white culture. And C, if possible, to effeminize and or homosexualize the black boy. We're going to get more into the homosexual piece in a minute. The second stage is psychiatric medication. Before I go into the second stage, I want to make sure you're clear about one thing. There's only one goal for public education for black boys, absolutely one. And that is to get them to acquiesce to the will of white supremacy. There is no other goal, absolutely none. The whole purpose is to get the black boy to accept the dictates of the American social order. To the extent that they can do that is to the extent that they can thrive and be successful. To the extent that they cannot do that is the extent to which they will be suspended, expelled, special educated, psychiatrically medicated, juvenile incarcerated, and ultimately exterminated.
That's right.
We have to be very clear about that. The black boy learns about white supremacy on the job because we're not teaching him about it at home. He learns on his own in kindergarten. Some learn in preschool that white people run this world and there's nothing me or my parents can do about it. Because our boys don't want to accept that type of reality because they still have their manhood. They haven't yet given it up yet. Many of them choose to drop out of school because they would rather be out on the street than have their manhood disrespect them on a daily basis. Sometimes we don't understand that. We ask our children, why are you not going to school? Why are you dropping out? Why are you not getting your diploma? Do you understand how difficult it's going to be? But he can't necessarily look too far into the future, but he understands his present. And at present, he's being psychologically castrated by middle-class white women, and he has decided he's not going to take it any longer. The problem isn't the child who doesn't go to school. It is logical for a child to drop out if they're being mistreated. That's logical. But because black people have been trained by their enemy to accept any type of treatment, we look at our children like there's something wrong with them when there's really something wrong with us. Stage 2, psychiatric medication. If the black boy does not acquiesce to the will of the white female teacher or the white male principal or the white teacher or principal in blackface, because there's a lot of them. The next stage is to force him chemically to acquiesce to the will of white supremacy. The whole purpose of psychiatric medication, and this is coming from the government, this is not my own analysis, this is actually coming from the government. The purpose, the original intent of psychiatric medication was to be used as a means of social control to prevent civil unrest in American ghettos. I want to make sure you understand that. Your son is not principally being prescribed Ritalin or Adderall or Cyclert or Depakote or Risperdal or Zoloft or Paxil so he can get a better education. There's no research that shows medicating improves the educating. Absolutely none. He is doped up so that he becomes docile to the treatment by police, that he becomes docile to treatment by the American social order. Ask yourself, where would we be had Marcus Garvey or Mr. Muhammad or Malcolm King or Medgar or Huey or anyone else, Kwame Ture, had been a child prescribed psychiatric medication? Would they had the logic or the reasoning to be able to embark upon the paths that they chose had their parents agreed to give them cocaine for kids? So you have to see the whole social programming of the situation. So you add homosexuality on top of the psychiatric war, and so now you have homosexual zombies walking around. Understand this, you know this, but sometimes it has to be said again so you remain conscious. Drugs don't solve problems. Drugs don't solve inattention. Drugs don't solve hyperactivity. Drugs don't solve anger. Drugs don't solve aggression. There is no evidence that any drug solves any problem. The drug's job is simply to suppress the symptom until the school day is over. Suppress the symptom until the school day is over. Now, the reason I take significant issue with the drugs is because I understand that the side effects are so debilitating that many of our boys, when they're old enough to try to make an honest and decent living, won't be able to, because the impact of the side effect of the drug would have been so significant that many of them won't be able to work. Kills brain cells on contact. Mess with heart function. Instant death, stroke, heart attack, liver, kidney failure, epilepsy, diabetes, schizophrenia, tic disorders, psychosis, and you know what psychosis is. That's what we call people quote-unquote crazy, which we shouldn't. But psychosis is when you hear things that aren't there and see things that are not there. It messes with the child's sleep-wake cycle, so either they sleep too much or they don't sleep at all. It messes with their diet to the point where they eat too much or they don't eat at all. And most importantly, from a eugenics, racial extermination standpoint, the drug erodes the black boy's ability to produce healthy semen. So when he's old enough to have children, many of our boys won't be able to, because you as his parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, caregivers, foster and adoptive parents thought that it was necessary for him to be able to sit still long enough to be miseducated. You can't put a kid in special ed. You can't diagnose ADHD. You cannot prescribe medication unless there was a black parent somewhere who gave permission for the psychologist to label the child in the first place. 2 million black men in prison, 2 million black children in special education. You do the math. You do the math. Where did special education come from? 1975, federal government, go back 54, Brown versus Board of Education decision, Supreme Court said you could no longer use race in education. As a result of that, white supremacists had to come up with a new strategy to keep the black boys away from the white girls. And let's be careful. Let's be clear. Segregation is based on keeping the white gene pool as pure as it possibly can be kept. The reason I'm saying that is because black people often give all types of erroneous and incorrect reasons for why racism exists. That's right, bro. Some of us say racism exists because white people haven't accepted Christ. Some of us say racism exists because white people haven't accepted Islam. Some of us say racism exists because they haven't accepted the Moorish way or the Hebrew way. Racism exists because they don't know that we built the pyramids. Racism exists because they're ignorant about what our possibilities are as a people. Racism exists because we don't act white enough. Racism exists because we can't talk like them or act like them. Those are not the reasons why racism exists. Racism is a psycho-biological survival system. A psycho-biological survival system based on white folks' desires to make sure that they are not exterminated by black men cohabitating with white women. One black man in a nation of white women can turn the complexion in 25 years. You need not kill. All you need to do is cohabitate. We've got to be clear about that. And because it is psychobiological, because the black gene is dominant and the European gene is recessive, you can't change that fact of nature. And if you can't change that fact of nature, you can't change white supremacy. You can destroy it, but you can't change it. So moral persuasion is not an option because they're fighting for genetic survival. They are a world's minority trying to guarantee that they will always be around. And so when black men date and marry white women and white men see us in the street and say nothing to us, we think it's because they've accepted it. They go back to their think tanks and they come up with new strategies for how they're going to get rid of black people. While I was sitting here today, I got a text from a friend of mine here in Maryland. She took a picture of a billboard, sent it to me here. And on the billboard, it says, some of you may have seen this because this is in the Baltimore area, it's a big billboard, and it says it costs $785 a month to take care of a child. It's one of the abortion eugenics advertisements, propaganda, getting black women to think twice about having a baby because it can be too costly. When I was in South Africa, driving to the airport, they did one better. They didn't say that it cost $785 a month to take care of a child. They said, we're going to pay you $500 US to get a full hysterectomy. This was on the way to the Johannesburg airport. I'll never forget it because I never saw an abortion advertisement that blatantly direct. For my Obama maniacs, it's important that you know this. One of the first executive orders that your black president signed when he took office was he reversed a federal ban that prevented your tax money from going to abortion agencies in Africa that advocated hysterectomies and abortions. It was illegal to use that money for hysterectomy and abortion. But one of the first executive orders that President Obama signed was to reverse that. Not only is he the homosexual president, he's the eugenics president too. And he has a very interesting past that I'm certain will come out when he's no longer president. But because you have been so programmed by black bourgeoisie, and you have been so programmed by the American social order, many of us would never even stop to consider that this man is just a strategy. One amongst millions that white supremacy uses to further its agenda. Obama's election did not signal a changing of condition for black people. It signaled a re-strengthening of the guard for white supremacy. See, if you don't understand white supremacy, nothing you see in your neighborhood, nothing you see in your country, nothing you see on the globe will make any sense to you. You have to understand white supremacy. What are three of the basic laws to white supremacy? And there's several. Well, law number one, we might change face, we might change form, we might change function, but the agenda stays the same. We are so misdirected by the appearance of things that we fail to study who's actually controlling those appearances. So you have to get yourself in the habit of asking this one question whenever you see something that looks a little peculiar. Who benefits most from this happening?
That's right.
Ask yourself that. When you see homosexuality in the black community, who benefits most from this happening? When you see black children dropping out of school, when you see black men marrying white women, who benefits most from this arrangement? President Obama being in office, who benefits most? If you ask yourself that question, you'll begin to peel away the veneer of illusion. See, one of black people's most difficult problems, the reason why progress hasn't been more effective, is that many of us are too busy trying to fit in as opposed to get ahead. As long as you try to fit in, the last thing you're thinking about is building for yourself. See, being accepted automatically falls under the domain of integration. Now, when I talk about integration, people automatically assume that you must be a separatist if you're not for integration. Black people are already separated from white people. You don't have to be a separatist. That's number one. Number two, you're not integrated. All you have is social integration. The ability to go to the ballpark, the ability to go see the Ravens play, the ability to use the same hotel. You only have the ability to spend your money with white people. That's the only integration you have. In fact, if you study the Civil Rights Bill of 63-64, you'll find that the Civil Rights Bill didn't even fall under civil rights law. It fell under commerce and interstate law. It was about business, not racial uplift. Integration was just a strategy for white folk to capitalize off the money in the black community. They said, let them into the baseball league. Look what they bring to the table. We're not changing our opinion about them, but look what we can make. We don't want them sleeping in our hotels, but look at the disposable income that they have. Speaking of disposable income, the report is out on 2011. Black spending. Black people spend more money on cell phones than every other group in America put together. And they also found that you replace your cell phone. This is white people reporting on your Negro economic behavior. They found that black people, unlike most other people, replace their cell phones for no other reason than a new one looks better than an old one. I'm reading this. They say most people replace the cell phone when it's no longer functioning or it's maladaptive. They say not black people. The minute something new comes out on the market, whether they need it or not, they will purchase it. We also found what? Of course, we watch more television than everybody else. And for the first time, we spend more time on the internet than we do in front of the TV. We also are overrepresented amongst those who buy automobiles. Once again, black people, unlike other people, buy automobiles not because they need one, but because it enhances their perceived sense of social status. So we are going into debt to look better to other black people. I'm not a fan of Will Smith, but his mother was the secretary at my middle school up in West Philadelphia.
West Philly?
Yeah, I'm from North Philadelphia though, but I went to middle school in West Philly. Jill Scott in the house. Will Smith said, black people spend too much money that they don't have trying to impress people they don't like to buy stuff they don't need. And he's not a psychologist, but boy, if that ain't perceptive, and I'm going to hope, I'm going to wish and pray that him and Jada ain't turning those two little children into some sort of Hollywood, and I don't want to say the word, because I'm seeing their pictures, and I'm saying I hope this young little brother ain't on a road to homosexualization, because I'm looking at the photos and the way he's dressing, and I don't like what I'm seeing. I'm hoping they're not doing that. Okay, I'm just going to hope. Okay? Now, getting back to the spending habits, and then I want to go back to that psychoacademic war. Black people made Toyota the #1 selling car dealership in the black community. Toyota, Nissan, Ford, I think Cadillac, malt liquor sales, we totally dominate the malt liquor.
Cognac.
Guess what I was told by one of the brothers who worked for a distributing company? We were sitting in a store one day up in Philadelphia, and he pulled out this big laptop, so I started asking him about his laptop, because I never saw one like that. It looked like one of the Army laptops. So he said, I work for a beer distribution thing. So we started talking about politics. I told him I was a Garveyite. We started building. He said, I'm going to tell you something. If black people knew what malt liquor would do to the liver, they would never drink another cup of it. Now he said, I make money off of this, but it is killing us. He said, what it would take one of the higher quality beers to do to the liver, and it would take them about 5 years to get to the point that malt liquor would have you in 6 months. He said malt liquor shouldn't even be sold. That's how toxic it is to the kidney and to the liver. And he said that when you look nationally at the malt liquor sales, it is almost earmarked for the ghetto. He said they don't even sell that stuff out in the suburbs. They earmark. And in fact, he said malt liquor is the waste that comes from making the other beers. It's the leftover stuff that they bottle it and send it to the neighborhood. Not to mention there's research out there that show that it messes with the man's ability, once again, to reproduce. The eugenics piece. Here's the thing, black people. It makes no sense for us to be making every foreigner who comes to America billionaires in a couple years without making ourselves and each other billionaires within a couple of years. Isn't it amazing that somebody sitting in China right now, never been to Baltimore, never been to a black community, but can't stand black people. But they can't wait to get a visa to come to Baltimore because they've been told by relatives and people who look like them that you can make a fortune off of black people. Because the black dollar is the most undiscriminating dollar in America. Every other dollar discriminates. If you don't believe me, you never see a Chinese corner store in a black neighborhood. You never see an Italian pizza joint in an Asian neighborhood. They only support each other. We don't support one another. And the reason we don't support one another is because we don't identify as being who we are. Most of us have a primary identifier that is something other than our race. Most of us identify with our religion, which is one of our biggest problems. Not that you identify with your religion, but that it is your primary identifier. So if I identify and I say that I'm Christian, automatically a white person, an Arab, an East Indian who's a Christian, is automatically within my in-group, and black people who have my same history are in the out-group. That's how critical identity is. So when black people walk down the street and they want to go purchase something, they don't even feel guilty about spending their money with somebody else because they identify as being American. So if I am an African American, then what's wrong with me supporting an Italian American? What's wrong with me supporting a Korean American? What's wrong with me supporting an Indian American? Because after all, we're all Americans. See, Amos Wilson said, until you change the identity, you won't be able to redirect the progress. Identity is the issue. See, when a Chinese man opens up a store, he don't have to advertise to Chinese people. You never see Chinese people give out flyers to other Chinese people. You never see East Indians give out flyers to other East Indians. You never see Arabs when they open up a gas station or the different stores that they have. You notice they only advertise to people who don't look like them. They don't have to advertise to the in-group, right? Because of in-group loyalty. It dictates you must buy from me anyway. So I don't need to sell you on my product. You have an obligation due to your identity to come and buy from me first. But with Negroes, there's no such identity. See, we have to understand something. Until we change our economic behavior, it's going to be difficult to change the political behavior. And if you don't change the economic and the political behavior, then you can't change the racial behavior or progress of black people. See, we hear a lot about crime, black on black violence, black people killing other black people. Well, psychologically speaking, where's all this coming from? Did they just wake up one day and start killing each other? Black on black violence is nothing more than the outgrowth of pain, misery, desperation, hopelessness, a lack of love, having been deserted. And whenever a person is filled up with that much pain, anything, the slightest provocation will turn them into a killer. I speak at the prisons. Some of the people who you would see who have taken lives you would have never thought in your life would have been capable of killing someone. And guess what I often hear from the killers? I can't believe I did it. I did not wake up that day with any intent to kill that man. Just at that moment, something came over me. You know what came over him? His pain, his hurt, his anger. Black people need healing. And until there is a healing, it will be difficult to be a building. And see, one of the things we like to do is hide the fact that we got issues. And we like to hide behind all that garbage that we love to buy. So you have good-looking black people in nice houses, black people who are well-educated, black people with good jobs, black people with nice cars. But behind all of that, you have depressed people. Behind all of that, you have anxious people. Behind all of that, you have chemically addicted people. Now, what is chemical addiction? Chemical addiction is nothing more than somebody who got a problem, a deep-seated psychological issue that's causing them pain and discomfort. And because they lack the willpower to face the demon and slay it once and for all, they rather simply sedate the issue, pacify the issue. But the problem with pacifying the issue is that you only feel good as long as that joint is there. You only feel good as long as that pack of cigarettes is there. You only feel good until that bottle of liquor is gone. And then once you come off that high, you're right back where you started, which makes you feel even worse than the beginning. So what do? Beam right back on up. And that's where the addiction comes from. There is no addiction without some sort of issue that you're trying to cope with, without facing. But we have to understand that you can't get the pleasure You can't get the peace of mind unless you go through the pain. I want to make sure you understand that. Any issue you got, a problem with your mother or father that you never rectified, something with your coworkers, brothers and sisters, baby mom, baby dad, ex-husband, ex-wife, somebody on the block, anybody, somebody at church, the masjid, the temple, the community organization, whatever it is you do, any issue you got, you have to understand that you will never be able to achieve peace unless you're willing to confront the pain. The peace stands behind the pain. If we could just get the willpower to slay our demons once and for all, they will start running our lives. Two most important questions that everybody has to ask themselves is what? Do you like your job and do you like who you live with? Those are the two biggest predictors of a life of happiness. Do you like what you wake up doing 40 hours a week? And do you like who you come home to after you work those 40 hours a week? If you like your job but don't like your spouse, you'll be one of those people who do triple and quadruple overtime. You ever see somebody never go home? When they leave on Monday, they pack for the whole 5 days. And you say, why don't you ever take your behind home? I like my job. I love what I do. I'm committed. No, you're not. You're subconsciously resisting going home to that husband or that wife because you wish you never married them. And if you like your husband and your wife and don't like your job, you're one of those people who call out and use up all your sick days. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And if you don't like your job or your spouse, that's sowing the seeds for chemical addiction or overeating or over shopping. Because we tend not to look at shopping as an addiction, but it is. We tend not to look at food as an addiction, but it is. Our young people have an incidence of obesity, significant one right now, in the African American community. Michelle Obama, she has an initiative against obesity, but my issue with the First Lady is that your campaign isn't dealing with the psychological triggers of obesity. Obesity isn't just about love of food. For most people, it has nothing to do with the food. It has to do with coping with some kind of problem. And while you're eating and drinking, your brain automatically arrests the chemicals that cause negative emotions. So that's why you find yourself gravitating to the refrigerator when you're having a bad day. You find yourself gravitating to that 2-liter gallon of Pepsi that you don't need to be drinking. Why? Because you feel better while you're under the influence of it. Food can be a drug. But I know young girls who have been victims of sexual issues and boys who've been victims of sexual issues, and as a result of that, they overeat to cope with their pain so they can stop thinking about it. I knew one young girl who told me, she said, Dr. Umar, the reason I am eating is because my innocence was taken from me when I was a little girl. And I was a pretty little girl. So I believe being pretty is what got me in trouble with that man. So I decided to become ugly so maybe another man would never touch me again. The psychological triggers for obesity. We have to stop spending more than we save. We are a race of conspicuous consumers. And it is not helping us at all. Too many people are making billions. The Korean hair care industry, oh my goodness. The automobile industry, oh my goodness. Nike, Adidas sneakers, oh my goodness. Black people shelling out billions of dollars every year on junk. You own 2 or 3 of something, you're automatically a conspicuous consumer. You don't need a television in every bedroom. In fact, your children don't need one at all. You don't need network television because all they're doing is teaching them how to be Negroes through the television. That's all it is a Negro too. Okay, BET, black exploitation television. And we need to turn it off. If you're going to let your child watch television, you better put a limit on it. 1 hour a day, no more than 2. You're going to let them play video games, and I prefer they don't play video games at all during the week. But if you're going to, no more than an hour a day. You got to limit that because video game addiction is real. I know young people who are literally addicted to video games. And when you think they sleep, guess what? They got the television on mute, still playing, and you wonder why he got bags under his eyes all the way down to his chin. Then he goes to school and they want to diagnose him with ADHD because he can't pay attention. He can't pay attention because he's fatigued and tired because he never goes to sleep. And please start sending your children to school with breakfast in their stomach. The brain does not function appropriately in the morning hours if it doesn't have the fuel. And I'm not talking about Lucky Charms. I'm not talking about Sugar Smacks. I'm not talking about Fruity Pebbles. Give them some grits. Give them some oatmeal. Give them some of those old-time breakfast meals that your parents gave you. That's what the body needs, not sugar.
They need to hear that.
Because you keep on giving them sugar, and the first thing the white teachers say, what? I think he got ADHD. So now he on a drug. Now he on 2 drugs, because table sugar is the first drug. And then he on Ritalin and Strattera. That's the second drug. And for those of y'all who don't know, table sugar was once classified as a drug by the Food and Drug Administration. That's why it looks like crack, weighs like crack, got the same side effects as crack. And if we call sugar what it is, which is crack, how many in this room are crack addicts? See, when a parent calls me saying the son got ADHD, the first thing we got to do is go to the house and throw everything out that has sugar in it. Fructose, sucrose, any kind of ose. It goes in the trash for 3 months. Now at first, guess what? He's going to suffer from sugar withdrawal, caffeine withdrawal, high fructose corn syrup withdrawal. So for the first couple of weeks, he's going to look like a crackhead because you cut off his crack. But you'll notice after the first 30 days, the behavior will start to subside. And if you ride it out for 90 days, you'll have your kid back. But the problem with putting the kids on the sugar fast is most of you addicted to the sugar. So when I tell you to throw out the Briars, you can't do that. When I tell you to get rid of the Pepsi, you can't do that. So the child has to stay addicted to sugar because the parents are addicted to sugar. That's how deep the condition goes. So anyway, when we get back to the psycho-academic war against black boys, after psychiatric medicine, if the drug doesn't force the boy to accept the dictates of white supremacy, they juvenile incarcerated. Black boys are suspended from school, significantly more than white boys for the same offenses. There was a report just came out from the United States Department of Education. It said black boys are suspended 3 times, white boys for the same offense. That's right. How is that? It's because the school teacher, the public school teacher, the charter school teacher, the parochial school teacher, the private school teacher, I don't care which one, because 93% of all teachers are Caucasian women. 93% of all teachers in America are Caucasian women. But whenever we talk about education, you notice nobody brings that up. Every time we talk about what's wrong with school, you get a laundry list of all this other secondary stuff that ain't primary. The schools need more money. Teachers need more pay. We need new textbooks. We need new school buildings. We need computers in every classroom. The kids need to stop listening to all that rap music. The parents need to get involved. Are those things important? Yes. Are they primary? Hell no. The parents could get involved. You could put the children in new classrooms. You could pay the teacher more money. You can put every child in the school of the future. Every teacher can be certified. And guess what? You will still have what you have right now. 1 out of every 4 black boys graduate from high school in this country. You know why you're still going to have that? Because the reason why they ain't learning is because the white woman don't want to teach them. The reason why they're not learning is because the white woman don't want to teach them. See, when your son can't read, you look at him. And you ask Raheem why you can't read. But it wasn't Raheem's job to teach himself. Your tax dollar is paying an employee to do that, and of course you should be helping it. Because I got a big problem with Negro parents because we seem to think homework is not important. We seem to think that homework is something that doesn't have to be done. And the minute your child begins to dip off in the test scores, first thing they want to do is send them to me to get a learning disability diagnosed. What is a learning disability? The failure on part of a child with normal intelligence to learn a scholastic skill. The failure on part of a child with normal intelligence to learn a scholastic skill. Well, let me ask you a question. If your child got normal intelligence, if your daughter got normal intellectual function, if your grandson has adequate cognitive potential, how in the hell can it be possible for him not to be able to learn how to read? How can it be possible for her not to be able to do math? Do you see what we're doing? We are creating an excuse for the schools not to educate. Special education is an excuse not to educate. Once your child goes into special education, they're likely to stay there until 12th grade. They're going to graduate with a regular diploma, but they can't read on 12th grade level, can't do math on 12th grade level, can't write on 12th grade level. You know what you just did? You voluntarily made your child a functional illiterate. I deal with it all the time. Functionally illiterate children, regular diploma, but it catches up with you when it's time to go to college. It catches up with you when it's time to go to the job. Special education was created to give white school districts the opportunity to keep black kids away from white ones. Because Brown versus Board said they couldn't use race, they couldn't use color. They did what? Created a whole list of disabilities. They made them up out of thin air. What in the hell is attention deficit? Hyperactivity disorder. Pure nonsense. Something they gave you in the 1980s. Same time they gave you crack so they can give your kids kitty crack. No attention deficit. That really stands for absence of his daddy from his home disorder. ADHD. It is about the daddy not being there.
Come on, bro.
Have you noticed that most of the boys labeled are the ones coming from single-parent homes where mothers are doing the best they can, but there's nothing normal about a woman trying to make a man? That's what this is about. When the father is present, you don't get no ADHD.
No, sir.
Y'all have 2 infant boys, correct? They got twin boys. How much you want to bet? Neither one of them boys ever get referred for special education. How much you want to bet? Neither one of those boys ever come up for ADHD evaluation because father is in the house.
Right.
And if father is not in the house, then those of us, men in the hood, in the community, we have to do what? Put a body on every black boy. Every black boy should have a male to whom they are accountable. I don't care if you have 5 sons of your own, make room for 2 more.
That's right.
Every boy that walks down that street should have a man that they have to answer to.
That's right.